free, that'd make no sense. It's just paid for by taxpayer dollars. Because access to universal healthcare services is considered a right in Canada.
Olá pessoal, sejam bem-vindos a mais um vídeo desse canal. Nós somos cidadãos do terceiro mundo e nesse canal nós reagimos e aprendemos sobre o Canadá. Nesse vídeo nós vamos reagir a 10 coisas que canadenses querem que você saiba.
Portanto, aproveite a oportunidade, considere se inscrever no nosso canal, clique no gostei, compartilhe esse vídeo e faça mais sugestões aqui embaixo nos comentários. E agora, vamos para a reação.
Everyone's favorite friendly country has some fun facts to share. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 things Canadians want you to know. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking to clarify Canadian stereotypes, correct misconceptions, or generally gush about things that we think you should know about this North American country.
I'm Canadian.
Number 10. It's not winter all the time. When many people think of Canada, they picture blizzards and polar bears. And don't forget the stereotype that all Canadians live in igloos.
My good friend Nantuck and I would build an igloo to protect ourselves from polar bears and flying hockey pucks.
While it's true that Canadian winters can be intense and long, Canada does warm up during the summer months. Igloos would be pretty useless.
There are many ways to describe the summer of 2012. Hot, dry, extreme. But if you're feeling the burn, consider it a unifying Canadian experience.
Like in many other countries, Canadian seasons are varied and unique. Visit in the summer or fall, and you'll be surprised at just how warm it can get, especially in the southern part of the country. Though one thing is certainly true, visiting Montreal in the winter can get a little slippery.
Isso é sobre essa questão de achar que é inverno o tempo todo. É verdade. Aqui mesmo nós achávamos que era muito frio, né? O tempo todo, neve o tempo todo. E agora que estamos descobrindo que lá também pode, que no Canadá também pode fazer bastante calor, né? Isso é uma coisa surpreendente.
Isso é verdade. E principalmente para um país que a gente não conhece nada. Então, todas as descobertas para a gente está sendo incrível.
Number 9. Toronto is not the capital of the country. While there is a joke that they like to consider themselves the center of the universe, contrary to popular belief, Toronto is not the capital of Canada.
So, you guys doing anything fun while you're in town?
Fun. In Toronto.
It is, however, the largest city in Canada by population, and the 4th largest in North America, just above Chicago. The title of Canadian capital goes to the much smaller and quieter Ottawa.
How did we end up with Ottawa?
So it is the capital of Canada.
A lovely city dedicated mainly to being the center of government. Much like Washington, D.C., Ottawa often gets mocked for being boring.
Suburban Ottawa's great. It has everything Brooklyn does. Really? Yes! Other than my job and my friends and my family, you, interesting people, museums, restaurants.
While not as exciting as Toronto, perhaps, Ottawa's charms are still not to be missed.
Ottawa, the Paris of Central Canada.
Number 8. A Canadian invented basketball. Believe it or not, it was the Canadian James Naismith, a McGill University graduate, who invented this popular sport back in 1891. Naismith was a phys ed teacher at the YMCA International Training School in Springfield, Massachusetts. He struggled with a class of students who were disobedient and short-tempered due to being stuck inside all day thanks to a harsh winter. He resolved to create an indoor game to keep the students distracted, and that would help them stay in shape. The end result was basketball.
100 years after James Naismith from Almont, Ontario invented it, basketball was being played by hundreds of millions of people around the world.
Eu nunca imaginei que o criador do basquete fosse ser um canadense.
Eu também, isso nunca passou pela minha cabeça.
Eu tô sem palavras.
Number 7. Canadian bacon is just ham.
There's bacon. Canadian bacon.
Yep, that's right. The term Canadian bacon is actually one made up by Americans. In Canada, it's known as back bacon, which is a far more accurate term, but really it's just ham. Just look at it. Does that really look like bacon? No. And Canada agrees.
If ham's Canadian bacon, then what the hell do you call bacon?
Canadians take their bacon seriously, and as such, the fact that Canada has come to be associated with this term borders on being offensive to the Canadian culinary world. In all seriousness, real Canadian bacon is excellent if you live south of the border. So if you want a real taste of Canadian bacon, you'll just have to make the trip. We highly recommend the maple glazed variety.
No! You gave me Canadian bacon instead of bacon? This misdeed cannot go unpunished.
Number
Caramba, eu não sabia que eles tinham um bacon próprio.
Eu também não fazia ideia. Inclusive, aqui em nosso país, tem algo com o nome do Canadá.
É lombo canadense. Será se é isso? Eu estou curiosa para provar bacon canadense.
Eu também. Eu quero muito provar o bacon canadense. Deve ser muito bom.
6. Tim Hortons isn't our only national coffee chain. Sure, when you're in the mood for a quick double-double or a box of Timbits, Timmy's is a great place to stop.
Thanks for the free donuts.
Just donuts, okay? They're like 2 for a loony.
But it's not Canada's only coffee chain, or even its best. Second Cup is another of Canada's national coffee chains, and some would argue it's much better, albeit typically more expensive.
Is that your second cup of coffee?
Third. Why?
You could also try Montreal-based Van Hoot, which has cafes across the province of Quebec. While competitive pricing, amazing marketing campaigns, and its place in pop culture has made Tim Hortons the reigning champ, you still got options. Plus, we even have Starbucks.
Oh, this coffee is excellent.
Number 5, we have 2 official languages.
My friend in Canada who got married way too young, they had to do their vows twice, once in French.
They speak French there too? God, that place is a mess.
The history of Canada is shaped by both the English and the French, with the two both laying claim to parts of the land until the 7 Years' War, at the end of which France ceded its colony to the English. Thanks to the policies of official bilingualism enacted in the 20th century, both languages are protected and represented today.
If it's Canada, just say the word. And then say it again in French.
These policies ensure that citizens can be served by the federal government in both languages, and politicians seeking to lead the country typically learn both French and English.
Leadership is about bringing people of all different perspectives together.
Isso realmente é muito incrível, porque é um país que tem 2 idiomas oficiais, mas ambos os idiomas são abraçados, né? Eu acho isso fascinante, porque você, além de estar acolhendo mais pessoas, é uma oportunidade que é dada para as pessoas aprenderem um outro idioma. Então, imagine se adotássemos algo parecido em nosso país, né? Não que nós temos 2 idiomas, mas nós temos outros países que falam espanhol e eu acho que seria bom se a gente falasse um pouco também, né?
Sim, a gente percebe que outros países, principalmente os países de primeiro mundo, que são os grandes países que a gente conhece, as pessoas falam mais de um idioma, né? No Canadá você tem uma questão que é diferente, mas no nosso país a gente só aprende o idioma nativo. Não há um incentivo para que fale outros idiomas também, que seria realmente muito interessante.
Je veux aussi rendre hommage à Thomas Mulcair.
While most of the francophone population lives in Quebec, there are many French-speaking communities across Canada, including a large one in New Brunswick.
Au Québec, on travaille en français. Fine. That leaves the rest of Canada under my jurisdiction, with the possible exception of some areas of New Brunswick.
Number 4, Canada is pretty progressive. Compared to our neighbors, it often seems like Canada is lauded for being a progressive paradise.
When I think about Canada, I actually think of progressive.
While it has its own share of social problems and debates, it is true that most of the fights on social issues that take such precedence in the American media have been solved in Canada. This is due in large part to stark differences between Canadian and American culture. Access to abortion is almost a non-issue. Gay marriage has been legal since 2005, and even the Conservative Party doesn't oppose it.
You know, the strongest evidence for genuinely demonstrating a domestic partnership is to take a quick drive on up to Canada and legitimize your relationship.
Legitimize?
Get married.
There are still many problems in Canada, and it's by no means a progressive utopia. But the country should be proud of all the progress it's already made.
We should move to Canada.
Number 3. Not all police officers are Mounties. Those officers dressed in red suits and great big hats are members of the RCMP, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Your cops are called Mounties.
While Canada does indeed use Mounties on the federal level, cities and municipalities use regular police officers, as they do in most countries. Mounties enforce federal laws and will work closely with the provinces and municipalities in order to accomplish their goals. And their tasks include dealing with organized crime, drug trafficking, and border control, among many other federal offenses. So, yes, Canada does have Mounties, but no, they don't go around solving crimes on horseback. And the country does rely heavily on municipal police forces as well. Also, Mounties don't always dress like that either.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land.
Number 2, healthcare isn't free. It's paid for by taxes.
Dad, no, it says don't walk.
Doesn't matter. They have free health care. Whoa, I'm rich!
Often when talking about the great things in Canada, free healthcare is brought up, but that term is a bit of a mischaracterization. Healthcare in Canada isn't somehow free. That'd make no sense. It's just paid for by taxpayer dollars, because access to universal healthcare services is considered a right in Canada.
Canada? What, is everyone going to have access to universal healthcare so no one has to choose between going bankrupt and treating a life-threatening illness?
While some arguments persist about the best way to design and maintain a program of universal healthcare, and there are still complaints that Canada's system lags behind those in European countries, the large majority of Canadians agree that it's been incredibly beneficial, and that healthcare is a great use of tax money.
Here's the healthcare.
Before we unveil our number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions.
Real maple syrup. I hate that Faco kind.
What's so bad about being Canadian?
Your milk comes in bags. Bags.
So yeah, apparently ketchup is so hot in Canada that they just threw the artificial flavoring all over the chips here.
Number 1. Not everyone has that stereotypical accent.
There's not going to be any fight without Scott Riles and the incredibly polite Canadian news team.
Yeah! Sorry about that, eh? While the accent does exist, it's more common in rural areas. And even then, people in the Maritimes and Newfoundland have their own distinct accent.
They sometimes have a funny way of saying things like a boot.
And the way they say about.
Which sounds like, what's that? A boot?
The majority of Canadians you meet, who will likely be from the big cities, don't talk with that accent. In fact, they sound very similar to Americans from big cities.
You got a weird thing for Canadian melodrama.
Got a weird thing for girls who say a boot.
We will concede that Canadians do say the word a lot, but it's often misused by those mocking Canada.
I moved here from Canada and they think I'm slow, eh?
A is another way of saying right or, you know, at the end of a sentence. Not a random word we just interject in the middle of conversations. Bet you learned something new today, eh?
Come on, what do we look like? Rookies? Sorry.
Estou surpresa porque eu não sabia muito dessas coisas.
Sim, e eu fico surpreso porque a cada dia, a cada vídeo que a gente faz, mais a gente vai conhecendo o Canadá. O Canadá realmente é um país único, muito diferente, e foi muito agradável a gente aprender mais sobre esse incrível país.
É verdade, eu estou surpresa em saber que eles têm um bacon deles. Eu fiquei curiosa sobre isso. E interessante também que eles têm um sistema de saúde gratuito, né? Gratuito não, pago por impostos. Mas isso me pareceu um ponto muito interessante, porque em nosso país nós também temos algo similar. E eu gostaria de entender mais como funciona no Canadá, né? Porque é um país onde eles se preocupam muito com o bem-estar dos cidadãos. Então, tudo como eles fazem, eles tentam visar isso. Então, é uma coisa realmente muito diferente pra gente.
Sim, isso porque a gente também não pode esquecer de mencionar sobre o fato de eles terem uma política sempre progressista, né? Ao ponto de que muitas coisas sociais eles já avançaram em relação aos Estados Unidos, por exemplo. Isso realmente é fantástico, né? Acredito que os cidadãos que moram no Canadá devam ser muito felizes por isso. Mas essa foi a reação nesse vídeo. Portanto, aproveite a oportunidade, considere se inscrever no nosso canal, clique no gostei, compartilhe esse vídeo e faça mais sugestões aqui embaixo nos comentários.
Muito obrigada por assistir esse vídeo e nos vemos na próxima reação.
Tchau!